Hello and welcome to the Golden Playbook. Today we are going over 5 tips and strategies to help give you an edge over your league mates. If you head into the draft with these 5 things in mind, you are absolutely set up to dominate your drafts. Tip number 1, avoid players coming off a major injury last season or players that sustained a significant injury in training camp. No matter how awesome a player was pre-injury or how well their rehab is going, they are human too, just like you or I. If we were coming off a major injury, whether it be an ACL, an ankle fracture, whatever it may be, and we'll go over some examples of players in a minute. They are human too, and there's a natural ramp up period that can take most of a full season, both from a physical perspective and a mental. Oftentimes getting over that mental hurdle of an injury is much harder than the physical side of things. So generally speaking, I like to avoid these players that are coming off the major injuries. Some examples for you guys: Chris Godwin, obviously coming off the brutal ankle injury that cost him the back half of last season. Reports are that he's ramping up and should be ready for week 1, but that is no guarantee in itself. And when he is back, he will probably have a ramp up period. I doubt he'll get full snaps, full reps in week 1. And the Bucs kind of indicated that by drafting Emeka Egbuka in the first round, who they are absolutely raving about in camp so far. So Chris Godwin, although he has been awesome, and he was awesome last season when healthy, he was a wide receiver 2 up until the ankle injury. He is a guy I am very wary to draft. Even though I know he's getting a discount, he's at the wide receiver 42, but he's being discounted for a reason. He is not going to be healthy for the full season. And like I said, he will probably have a ramp up where he is just not going to provide adequate fantasy numbers for much of the season that we need. Another guy, and this may be the outlier we'll see, is Stefon Diggs coming off the ACL. He got injured in week 7, so he had, the second half of the season he missed as well. He's about 10 months off of the ACL. And listen, we've seen guys come off the ACL and have good seasons like Adrian Peterson, but it is much more rare to come back and have a good season as opposed to, the numbers and numbers of guys who have come off the ACL and had a slow start or re-injury rate is very high, right? When coming off a serious injury, there's a much bigger likelihood to have a soft tissue injury, whether it be a hamstring or quad, because it has spent that many months down rehabbing the knee. So those muscles are still kind of getting back to playing shape. And so re-injury risk is very high. And yes, I know we've been hearing great things out of camp for Stefon Diggs, that he has no limitations. He'll be ready for week 1, full go. And although I think this is probably true, I'm very, very skeptical that, coming off the ACL, he might not quite be the Stefon Diggs that we know from previous seasons. And another guy, Brandon Aiyuk, who is actually on the PUP right now. So there's a very good chance that he misses the first 4 games outright, in which he is not being discounted enough. I know he's the wide receiver 52. I know we've seen what Brandon Aiyuk can do when he is healthy, when he's on the field. But we've seen the 49ers kind of provide with Jauan Jennings, George Kittle, Ricky Pease coming into it as well. So I would not be shocked if Brandon Aiyuk misses the first 4 games and then still has a ramp-up period. So I think Brandon Ayuk's not going to be very valuable for a big, big chunk of this season. I would definitely be wary and kind of avoid drafting Brandon Aiyuk unless very, very late flyer. So those are guys that sustained major injuries last season. How about a couple of guys who have already sustained injuries in camp? Let's talk about Joe Mixon, and this might be the most frightening one of them all. Obviously, he had the ankle injury last season that sidelined him for much of the end of the season. But now there's reports that he's got a foot, an ankle, he's been in a walking boot, may be ready for week 1, but will miss a lot of training camp. This is a very, very mucky, muddy situation. I am pretty much avoiding Joe Mixon at all costs right now. There's just too much up in the air. I know we've seen Joe Mixon be an absolute workhorse and a great fantasy asset. I'm very, very skeptical of his health and if he'll ever get back to the Joe Mixon we know. On top of that, he is aging. He is in his upper 20s. So Joe Mixon is a guy I am very, very likely to avoid in drafts this season. Next, Isaiah Likely suffered a foot injury. They're saying it's a small fracture, should be out 6 weeks or so, which is most of training camp, right? Likely was a guy that people are expecting a big jump this season, even with Mark Andrews there. But maybe we weren't going to draft him as our tight end 1, especially in leagues where there's no premiums or anything like that. But I think this kind of shuts down the Likely steam a little bit and gives Mark Andrews a little prop up, even though he was, a popular fade going into this season. I think anytime you have an injury to the foot, ankle, knee, anything lower like that for pass catchers, it's going to take time to ramp back up, especially when you're missing this training camp period. Like I said earlier, it is very, very easy to get a re-injury or an injury to another part of the body, soft tissue. It's so easy to get a hamstring strain when you're coming off a foot injury. So Isaiah Likely, a guy who's maybe not on the top of our radar anyways, but I think this definitely dulls down his buzz and then kind of props Mark Andrews back up to be potentially a top 8, top 6 tight end. Last guy to note on the list, Najee Harris, obviously has the eye injury, some sort of firework mishap. But with that being said, he is still not practicing. He's been wearing shades, so there's probably light sensitivity. Who knows what's going on? It's hard to be a running back in the NFL with only one working eye. Even if this isn't painful for Najee, this is probably very, very limiting to do what he needs to do. And with that being said, they obviously drafted first rounder Omarion Hampton. So this is absolutely skyrocketing Hampton's value. I feel like his value would have gone up even without the Harris eye injury. But now that this is the case, Najee is on my do not draft list, and Omarion Hampton gets a nice lift up. My second tip piggybacks off the first one, and that is to look out for guys who have the opportunity to benefit from these injured players. So for Chris Godwin, he's likely to be, slow or out. I already mentioned Emeka Egbuka is absolutely going to take a nice role. Should be a slot guy. First round rookie, lots of buzz. Baker has already been raving about how good of a player he is. I think especially even at the beginning of the season when Godwin's down, I think Egbuka could really turn some heads, kind of solidify a role. And a little bit deeper than that, Jalen McMillan, a second-year guy who came on strong at the end of last year when Godwin was hurt. I think McMillan could be another guy to look out for late. And of course, we know Mike Evans is a mainstay. Doesn't need to be mentioned, but a guy to really be looking out for is Emeka Egbuka. As for New England, with Diggs' injury, although Diggs is the guy I'm least worried about on that list, some guys to be looking out for as potential number 2, number 3 options. Rookie Kyle Williams, lots of buzz in camp, third round pick. I think he'll be the number 2 wide receiver on this other side of Diggs. And then Demario Douglas has been the slot guy for him for a couple of years, is building great chemistry with Drake May, as all reports are indicated. So those are 2 receivers to look out for. Whether Diggs is in or out of the lineup, I think New England's going to have a much better passing attack in 2025. And then a guy I already mentioned in San Fran is Ricky Pearsall, of course, with Brandon Ayuk down, and even Juwan Jennings has been struggling with a reoccurring calf injury. This could open the door for Ricky P to be a number 1, number 2 wide receiver at the worst. As long as he stays healthy in his own right. I know he's having some hamstring issues, but I think Ricky P, just by sheer opportunity and volume, could be a great value in drafts. Also, of course, look out for George Kittle to get a bump up. And if we want to look at the 49ers from a real holistic approach on offense, this could be a huge bump for CMC in the passing game. We're already expecting a big bounce back, but if they're down 2 of their top pass catchers, CMC could get 4 or 5 catches a game. Could just absolutely increase his value and be the cheat code that we know him to be when healthy. As for Houston's running back situation, with Joe Mixon being down, the veteran Nick Chubb comes in and can presume kind of a starter's role in the meantime. We know Nick Chubb has had some serious injuries in his own right. All reports is he is back to his normal self and kind of doing his thing. And then another guy to look out for in that spot is rookie Woody Marks out of USC. A good pass catcher in his own right. So I think Chubb and Marks are going to be the 2 to kind of look out for to try to pick up the slack in Mixon's absence. And then last guy I already touched on, Omarion Hampton. He's already a 3rd round pick, and I think his value could get even better with Najee being out. If Harris is out for most of training camp, I think Hampton's easily a beginning of the 3rd, end of the 2nd round pick. So those are the guys to look out for who will benefit from players coming off of big injuries or who have sustained injuries in training camp thus far. Tip number 3 is a very, very simple tip, and that is if you're struggling with who to draft on draft day, just draft players on good offenses. Good offenses mean lots of yards, lots of points, lots of fantasy points. So if you're stuck, you're overthinking things, just draft players from good offenses. If we take a look at 2024, some of the top offenses: Detroit Lions, Buffalo Bills, Baltimore Ravens, Tampa Bay Bucks, Washington Commanders, Bengals, all teams that we know have absolutely studs, providing lots of fantasy points from the quarterback, running back, wide receiver position. Obviously Detroit, Goff, Gibbs, Amon-Ra, and it goes down the list. All these high-powered offenses that are scoring lots of points are going to result in lots of fantasy points. And with the help from our friends in Vegas, who have already put out lines for the 2025 games, we can see what the implied point totals are going to be for the offenses in 2025. And they have at the top of the list 4 implied points per game: Buffalo Bills, Baltimore Ravens, Kansas City Chiefs, Detroit Lions, Commanders, Eagles, Bucks, and the list goes on. These are the teams that we know have put up lots of points in the past, so this is not going to be a fluke thing for them. And listen, if it's draft day, you're getting to your pick, you're starting to stress out, who do I take? Look at these teams that are going to score lots of points, have lots of yards, run it up, and grab the quarterback, grab the running back, grab one of the receivers from these teams. And more often than not, you're going to do okay. It's just way better odds of getting a player who's going to produce than grabbing guys from bad offenses, or at least bad projected offenses. For example, the Browns, the Saints. You may think Chris Olave is a great talent, a great player, lots of opportunity, but he's on a bad projected offense. And you could grab a guy like Jameson Williams, who, yes, he's the wide receiver 2 on his team, but his team is projected to score so many more points, have so many more yards than the New Orleans Saints. It's not to say Olave can't outscore Jameson Williams. In fact, I wouldn't even be shocked. But you're just taking a better odds, a better chance on a good offense as opposed to these bad offenses. Of course, there's going to be guys that produce fantasy points on bad offenses. That's how the NFL works. But you're just having a much, much better chance of actually getting a guy who pays up at value if you grab guys from these top scoring offenses, at least the top implied. Of course, implied points, it's not guaranteed. Any team, of course, is a serious quarterback or running back or lineman injury away from their offense not performing at a top level. But you can't think in terms of that. You just have to look at who is supposed to be good, which offense is going to provide, and draft players for your fantasy team that are going to be on these good offenses. For tip number 4, we're going to continue to use our friends in Vegas, and we're going to look at their projected season-long totals for individual players. And you can look on this at really any sportsbook is having these lines out right now. I've got a couple screenshots just from Underdog, but you can look on DraftKings, FanDuel, wherever you like. You can see where they have the yards and touchdowns for each individual position and see what guys might be potential values. Who has a similar yard and touchdown total, but is going 2 or 3 rounds later than another receiver? Those are guys you might want to target who are getting kind of overlooked in the fantasy world, whether people are being blinded by potential upside, kind of projecting a dip, or whatever the case may be. There's so many narratives that go around in fantasy football, but the analytics nerds in Vegas are very, very good. There's a reason they are the ones who are in business and have all the money. Their lines are often very, very sharp. So we can see here that Bijan and Saquon are being drafted pretty universally as running back 1, running back 2, whatever order you have them. Saquon's yards is higher by almost 300 yards and has another rushing touchdown. So the books are projecting Saquon, to be better overall. Of course, these are just projections and they're trying to manage their money, all that type of stuff. I get it. You can get a really good idea of how the analytics nerds are thinking these players are going to do and what they project out to be. So scroll through your sports book. Not that you have to make any bets or anything, but just see what lines players have. And you can find a DJ Moore who's going 2 rounds later than some of the second round guys who has similar projections. So just take a look and you can use these numbers to find good potential values later in drafts. My 5th and final tip for this video is to utilize stacking on teams. And if you don't know what stacking is, that is getting multiple players from the same team, from the same offense. Typically involves, a quarterback and a wide receiver, or multiple wide receivers, whatever the case may be. Stack your chips onto the same so you can maximize your value. That way, when Kyler throws a touchdown to Marvin Harrison and you have both guys, you don't just get the Marvin Harrison points, you get the Kyler Murray points as well. Stacking is a huge way to maximize your upside and your potential. Listen, getting 5th or 6th place in your fantasy league does you no good. So unless there's like a huge drastic penalty for being last, when you utilize stacking, you're much more likely to be first or last. That's just how the cookie crumbles. If you bet your chips on an offense that massively underperforms, yeah, you're probably not going to do good. But like I said, as long as you don't have some crazy league punishment, which I know there's some out there, but if you don't, there's no difference between getting last and getting 5th. You're not in the money. You want to be first, you want to be second, where the money is. So if you utilize stacking, you are absolutely going to maximize your potential. Think about it. If you had Ja'Marr Chase last year, yeah, you probably had an awesome team. But what if you had Ja'Marr Chase and Joe Burrow? Perhaps you even had Chase Brown or T. Higgins on that squad, and you're down that stretch of time where Burrow was 250, 3 touchdowns each game. Chase Brown was having 6 receptions a game, and obviously Ja'Marr Chase was going off to be the wide receiver 1. Imagine if you had stacked that. I guarantee you were probably in your playoffs, in the championship, winning your championship. So utilize stacking on offenses that are going to be good. As I showed you from tip number 3, there's obviously that top tier of offenses. Those are good ones to look at to try to stack. Yes, I'm not telling you to overstack, grab the entire offense for a team. That is definitely overboard. But try to at least pair up a quarterback, a wide receiver, a couple of guys, and I guarantee you your max potential, your ceiling will be much higher. So if you just mix and match different guys from different teams, I guarantee if you utilize stacking, your maximum potential will be higher. As we learned from Best Ball, this carries over to redraft as well. All right, there you have it. There are my 5 tips. Make sure you smash the like button. Comment down below any other tips you guys have or what your favorite one from my video was. If you like this kind of content, make sure you smash the subscribe button as we are ramping up to fantasy draft season. We will be continuing to get more content out to you guys. Thank you guys so much for the support. I appreciate you. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.